the fact that it does that is what makes the entire ecosystem function. If you take the striving away, you take the life away. We're standing right now in what is essentially a clearing in a lowland woodland. And a lowland woodland has a lot of features that are shaped by the water that moves through it. We have the Arkansas River right there. And over there on the other side of that line of trees back behind me, not behind that house, on the other side of the field, there's a line of trees. On the other side of that line of trees, there's another creek. So we're surrounded on all sides here by water, which is a very nice place to be. But whenever we have flooding, the water comes through, it flows over the banks, and it finds new spots where it can go, and it cuts channels through the soil all the way down into the subsoil. But this periodic flooding, it only happens every so often, so you don't have every single year floodwaters coming up and cutting new channels. What happens to those channels afterwards? Well, nature happens. Now, whenever storms occur and the waters rise, not to the point of the flooding that created deep channels, but enough to get things moving, the storm debris, broken twigs and branches, leaves, and other material gets deposited in these low spots where it stays with moisture, decomposes, and makes fertile soil. This, of course, fills in the low spots over time. And, of course, tree roots in the soil stabilizes things, and the water needs to find some other place to go the next time there's a big flood for it to create a channel. Sometimes it happens at the end of a tree's life cycle, or it can happen whenever a tree is shallowly rooted and we have strong storms, but the tree can fall down. And whenever it does, the roots pull up and they pull out whatever subsoil happened to be down below there, exposing that and creating a pit in the ground. Meanwhile, what was left up here at the top, the root ball and whatever soil was left, drops down and creates a mound. So we have pits and mounds that are being created to change the topography inside of the forest. And of course that creates opportunities for diversion of floodwaters in the future to create different channels, and also to create spots for waters to gather, to sink into the soil to feed the life in the forest. All right, so quick recapping of the way that lowland forests build soils. We have the cut and fill from periodic flooding, where the rivers overflow their banks, cut channels, then the waters recede. They don't come back to that point for a few years. In the meantime, those low spots get filled in with leaves and branches, woody debris, and material that gets in there with the regular storms and seasonal flooding that occur. That builds up soil. The trees grow their roots in, stabilize the area. Flooding doesn't occur in that direction anymore. Now the waters need to go off somewhere else, create new channels, so we build up soil that way. Old trees fall over, creating pits and mounds to build soil. And then, of course, back here along that line, you can see all the tangles of vines and brush growing up there, and they are creating this mesh, like a fence, you may see this in your backyard as well, that captures that material and it blocks and builds up. So we have cut and fill, and we've got block and build, and we've got pits and mounds. And all of those work to create soil building inside of a forest ecosystem. All we're going to do here with our soil preparation, our foundation, is cause that to happen a lot faster. And that brings us to where we are today, with a fork and a series of trenches dug into the soil here in the side yard. Some of that soil that was in still fairly decent condition, not completely and totally wasted, lots of organic matter still in it, retains moisture, although it leaves a lot to be desired. We've retained up here. The stuff that was a bit more clay-ridden and not desirable at all for planting in, we moved over here closer to the foundations of the house to encourage water to move away from the house and towards this series of canals out here, where we can actually do something with that water. The only thing we can do around the foundation of the house is erode the foundations of the house. We don't want that happening. Now, to alter the soil, and what we're doing is loosening up the soil. with the fork down to whatever the depth of this fork is. It's not that deep. We're going to come alongside where the trench is, and we're going to loosen and loosen and loosen. All of this excess that I've got up here on the top is going to get worked in with everything else. It's going to increase the volume of the soil here, lifting it up a bit. And then we'll come along with the rake and do a little more distribution in a moment. Now, if you want to reduce the number of grasses and weeds and other things that you're going to have to deal with when you're at this stage, about 2, maybe 3 months prior to getting to this point in the early spring, take some of those tarps, lay them out over the ground. You can also use cardboard, just as long as you cover the ground completely and make sure that that stays covered so no light can get to the soil. And it's going to start by loosening up and killing off a lot of that stuff, so you don't have to worry about dealing with the living materials early on in the spring, and that'll give your seeds a jump start. Now we've got the sun coming down a little bit, and you can have a look and better see what we've been up to here. The more varieties of clover I can try out here, the better. The more alfalfa varieties I can try out here, the better. Hey, I got more than I knew. Will I do my extra? Oh no, I've got extra. You know, whenever I'm doing this, I don't get all the seeds into the ground. And I don't have to. Part of the reason for using a lot of seeds all at once is it lets you allow nature to do some of the deciding. As a matter of fact, you allow nature to do almost all the deciding about what gets grown and what doesn't get grown. It's very chaotic. I think we'll let the results speak for themselves. Yeah, we'll let the results speak for themselves. Not neat, orderly rows, not careful depths, not little tiny compartments that everything goes into. Nature doesn't go that way. It's a chaotic mess. The plants and the animals, everything thrives. Everybody reaches for what it needs to survive. The fact that it does that is what makes the entire ecosystem function. If you take the striving away, you take the life away. It's getting a little misty right over here. Okay, now after a few days, we're seeing the clovers begin to pop up. Those will stabilize the soil and of course serve as our fertilizer later on. You've seen what that looks like in some of our other videos. If you haven't, well, look up there. And of course you see how the radishes are settling into the lower spots. They're going to send their roots down and break up the soil and feed the soil as they decompose. We'll harvest some greens and we may harvest a radish or two out of here. But most of those radishes are just going to rot down into the soil, and that will condition the soil, feeding the microbes and allowing it to be vibrant and full of life. Now is also a good time to add any additional soil amendments that you want, including charged biochar, pretty much good in any application, or if you have particularly heavy soil, clay soil, adding pelletized gypsum to help break those clods up right now is also a good thing to do. We don't need to do any of that immediately at the moment, so we are going to proceed on to our next phase, which is planting. But you're going to have to stay tuned to watch that. That's all I've got for you today, good people. As always, I hope you found today's video informative or entertaining, and if you did, well, you know what to do. I'll catch you next time. Until then, get out there and get growing.